anyone who came in January, we did one then, and then now it's June. So we do it twice a year. And a few years ago, I was talking to a reporter for a story about what's going to happen in the coming year. And she asked me, she's like, how come you always talk about what's going to happen, but like no one agrees when I talk to them? And I was like, well, I don't know if they agree or not, but it's not like fun and cool. It's not like attractive to say if the market's going up or down, because if you say the market's going up, then sellers are going to wait to sell. And if you say the market's going down, then buyers are going to wait to buy. And so if you care more about yourself than someone else, you're like, well, I'm just going to not say anything and just learn scripts and just learn how to like get someone to buy a home in any market. But my purpose on this planet, I'm sure hopefully all of yours, is not to just make money. Money's a good thing, but it can't be a master. And so I told the reporter, I was like, look, there's two types of people that most of us are. Either we just like have our head down and we're just taking care of our family, which is good, and our friends, and paying our bills, and we're like, look, I just don't want to worry about like bad news that could happen or good news that could happen. I'm just worried about like what I can do. Or I know, but I'm going to overthink it, and I'm going to think, well, I can't say anything, or I do want to say something, so I just don't want to like put some down in the universe that could scare someone. Like I said, and then there's like a third group, which hopefully we all are, which is why you guys are here, because you could have said like, oh, it's spring break's gone and school's over and now everyone's out of school, and so like really you don't have time to be here. So I really appreciate you guys being here. Most people are not this type of person, but you guys are, for being here, and that is the person who's willing to think outside the box and look at it like what's really true and what's really happening. The media will start talking about it soon. It's just not popular just yet. There's really important things going on, like the devastation in Ukraine. COVID's finally starting to go away. There's just a lot of horrible things happening in the United States and mass shootings. So there's a lot of things that are more timely and trying than like the economy. And so I thought, we were going to do July, so January and July. January to start the year off and like kind of discourage all of you, and then July to like, well, it's funny, like, I mean, if anyone who was here in January, like, I hate to say it, but everything came true, Stock market's not going to go down, really. Inflation's not going to pick up, really. I mean, like, in January, inflation wasn't cool. Inflation was not a four-letter word yet. You guys remember that? In January, interest rates were still, right around 2.95%. That was only January, guys. In January, the housing market was still like 30 offers and coming soon status, like sight unseen offers. So fast that's starting to go away. In January, like things were still like really obvious that the market's gonna go on for forever. And so the reporter was asking about a year ago, so how come people don't talk like you? And I was like, well, we're all uniquely made. So that's one reason. But another reason is, like Beth said, I did work as an economist in DC, and the only reason that's important, guys, is that you guys can know everything that I know, and you probably do. But we just get busy and we think we just need to learn about real estate. But real estate is, on one hand, like the biggest emotional decision, but on the other hand, it needs to be the biggest logical decision. During COVID, people were like, I can't buy a house sight unseen. I'm like, you know what? Everyone should buy a house sight unseen. I can't buy a house without like seeing pictures and video. I'm like, really? You know the schools, you know the size, you know the bedroom count, you know the bathroom count, you know the location. Like, why do you need for music to distract you from the highway in the backyard? Why do you need the cleaners and the stagers to distract you from the cigarette smell and from the room being smaller than you need it to be? I mean, if you think about it, we make most of the wrong decisions through emotion. Like, technically, it's actually one of the things that showed us that we actually lean on emotion too much. And in the pandemic, we leaned on emotion too much on a lot of things. And so logic needs to pick back up. And so, guys, we don't act on logic. Like, everyone knows that. It's a cliche, but it's so true. And so people don't think about, so when I was an economist, I learned all those other variables, but people don't think about that. If you're selling real estate, you're like, I need to focus on if it's something for sale, and how do I win the bidding war, what's top dollar, and you want to live in a vacuum. And if my kids go to this school, I need to worry about this teacher. I don't worry about next year's teacher. I don't worry about last year's teacher. I don't worry about their classmates. The funny thing is, for anyone who has kids, your kids' friends' parents are raising your kids. So we need to get outside of our vacuum, guys, because in today, what's happening in the world is more important than what's happening in your own backyard. And today, what's happening in the world, what's going to happen in your backyard tomorrow. And so I learned this about 20 years ago when I was in DC. And guys, what happened in your past is going to be here in the future. And so it's a gift, you just don't realize it at the time. And so I learned a lot about the different variables that have nothing to do with real estate on the surface. And I really appreciate you guys being here. Like, this is a blessing, because when I got into real estate, I was like, I'm not doing it because I watch HTV. I'm not doing it because I like designing homes. I didn't know much about real estate. I came here on a whim, and I didn't even know God then. But I knew that I wanted to make a difference, like all of you guys. Because again, I really appreciate you guys being here, because I guarantee you it would have been really easy to say, school's out, it's summertime, there's so much going on, I can't be here. But I learned about these variables, guys. I learned about the stock market and inflation, and I learned about the 2-year bond and the 10-year bond, and if it's inverted or not, if it's going upwards or downwards, and I learned about gold and silver, and I learned about real estate, and I learned about things on a logical level. Because again, we act on everything on an emotional level, but life happens on logic. And then we react emotionally. But what if you actually could see it happening before it happened? I'm not Nostradamus, guys, and everything I say, you guys know this. We live in a vacuum. We get busy in social media and email and text and Snapchat and Twitter and TikTok. I mean, holy cow, my wife loves that TikTok all night long. I'm like, I can't tell if it's true or not, because these people are all famous, but half the things they're saying to you are not true, and the other half is trying to create fear. And so what I'm going to share is just really basic stuff. I used to think you have to be really smart or really busy to be helpful and successful, but really you just have to pass forward whatever you have learned. So I'm going to pass forward what I learned when I was an economist and what I'm seeing today and what I see to happen in the future, the near future. And I say near future, I mean later this year, next year. Next year is the near future, guys. For anyone who's ever tried to get in shape or run a marathon, not me. The near future is not tomorrow. We all think well, I got 3 closings next month, I'm good. Yeah, well, interest rates aren't going to go to 5% until they do, right? 3 homes aren't going to hit the market in the same street as your listing until they do. We have listings that are not going live now because we've put a hold because 3 other coming soons hit the market. And so we're like, okay, well, a month ago there was nothing on the market, now there's 3 coming soons here and 2 actives there. We've been talking to our firm for years about how if actings outpace pendings and now coming soons and actives outpace pendings, we're in trouble. We're like, well, why does that matter? Well, really, because when supply is up, what does that mean for demand? And guys, you know this, high supply and low demand lowers prices, high demand, low supply raises prices. We talked about this a little bit for anyone who knows me, but the one thing I don't think a lot of us talk about is what happens to demand when supply goes down or up. What happens to supply when demand goes up or down. So I'm gonna talk about a few of these variables in the past and what they mean to real estate in the present and the future. And I'm gonna throw some things out there for you guys to decide. If I said to myself, okay, I weigh 185 pounds now, but I used to weigh 165 pounds, it's very easy for me to realize I need to get back to where I was, right? Or I could just say, oh, I look good as long as I wear big suits and I wear dark clothes. Or I could be well, I used to be 165, that means I've gained 20 pounds over time. But maybe I didn't notice it because it's been so long. But you the expression you're losing so slow you think you're winning. Guys, we don't live that long. We have to be honest with ourselves. So I'm gonna throw some variables out there, guys. I'm gonna stop with the hyperbole and psychology and get into the truth. The stock market, we talked about in January, it was at 37,000, right? That's the Dow. You got the S&P, you got the Dow and the NASDAQ. Each of them has a different compilation of stocks. I like the Dow, it's not the big, it's not small, it's just really kind of universal. In January, it was at the highest ever, and it was at 37,000. And today, it's right around 32.5, 32.8, depending on what time of day. It's going down. It's down 200 points already today. But in January, the stock market was not going to go down because last year went up, and the year before went up, and the year before went up, and the year before went up. It actually had a drop in 2018, and no one saw. The year before went up. The year before went up. Guys, I hate roller coasters. I took my youngest son to Carowinds last weekend, and fortunately, he's too short. So I tried to get on the rides, and bud. So we went on some rides, and the crazy thing is, I told my wife, Jessica was out of town with Kane in Nashville, so I was with a younger guy, and I was like, oh, we went on the scary ride, and she looks at me, she's like, Knox is 5. You didn't go on a scary ride. And I was like, I can't even open my eyes. I'm so scared of these rides because I don't know what's gonna happen, right? What I'm telling you is what's going to happen. I don't like the roller coasters because I don't know what's gonna happen. I know what's gonna happen, but I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it, which means throw up and the G-force. But here's the thing, what goes up must come down. Ask Elon Musk, he shoots a rocket up, it has to come down, guys. So the stock market was going up and going up and going up. Let me give you a little perspective. 20 years ago, gold was 475% less than it is today. Stocks were 260% less. Okay, so gold is always gold grows almost double the stock market. And the reason for that is people buy stock, they buy stock, they buy stock. So as soon as it starts going down, they move it to cash and precious metals because they want to cash out. And so then gold goes up, and people buy gold for everything, right? and it's not really, it's kind of like universal bartering. So gold is almost double stock, historically. If you have $1 and you put it into gold, over time it goes up more than stock. Does that make sense? All right, well, in the last 5 years, stocks have outpaced gold by almost double. See how like it gets really easy, like you start realizing, like, okay, the last 5 years things have been running up. And you're like, well, stock market just has to keep going up forever because things are so good. Really? Like, inflation. So back last year, there was no inflation. You know, a year ago, inflation was 4%, which is actually what it should have been because it's been about 1.5%, 2% for about 15 years now. Now we're at 8.5%, guys. And 8.5% inflation does not actually even include a lot of household goods that are direct to consumer, such as gas and food. So things that like all these moms and dads in the room, all these empty nesters and baby boomers, all these singles, no matter where you are in life, you all need gas when you drive, right? You all need food. None of that counts. So the true inflation is not 8.5%, it's more like 18 to 25%. And here's the thing, your house can go through the roof as much as possible, it's great. You can't do anything with equity on a 1098 statement, and you could do even less with it in your house, unless you want to just like increase your payment by borrowing against it, which you could do until you find out the rates are going up, right? So if you have a high payment, you should really cash out refi and use that money. But if not, you just need to be happy if you have a low 30-year fix, but just let that money be there or sell and get out, because that money is going to be needed when everything is like really expensive, right? So inflation's at 8.5%. In January, it was around like 5%, 6%, which is about a point higher than middle of last year. This might seem really boring, but I'm gonna like build it up, build it up, build it up, and then you're like, oh, look at that beautiful home. Inflation right now is at least double what it should be. But before it comes back down, the economy has to crash. You know what the whole point of inflation is, right? The whole reason why inflation happens is that there's too much demand. And so the Fed has to make it more expensive to buy so that people stop buying. Like, it's like, I'm just gonna dumb it down for myself. I'm looking in the mirror when I talk to you guys. I wanna remind myself how basic the US government is. I mean, like, it's very big. Like, it just keeps growing, because like, you can't fire people, it just keeps growing, growing, growing. But it's very basic. You know, if demand is too high, what do? You raise the rate, or you print more paper. Well, it's money, but it's not really worth as much. And so the dollar goes down in value because you printed more of it. Let's go back to supply and demand for a minute. We're not talking about real estate yet, but we are. If you have like 1,000 $1 bills, and then they make another 1,000 $1 bills, each dollar is 1 to 50 cents. Does it make sense? It's twice as many. If a home on the street's worth 800 and 3 more homes hit the market, it might not go to 6, 7, 8, but they're all worth less right now. Is that fair? Because what happens, people just pause, and the first person out lowers the price, and it's just a race to the bottom. The markets are always moving, guys. There's no such thing as a static market. Like, there's no such thing as like, real estate market is not going up or down. The stock market's not going up or down. People are not buyers. Like, things are always happening. During the pandemic, people weren't doing anything because they were doing something. They were deciding that their home was the American dream again because it was the only safe haven they had. They couldn't travel. They had to work from home. They had to school from home. And the backyard was their only safe place to just have peace, right? Well, that's not gonna last. You know, after 9/11, people are like, I'm never gonna travel again. After 9/11, people are like, I'm gonna save a ton of money. After 2008, oh, I'm never gonna like overpay for real estate again. It's never gonna happen. You know, after 2009, oh, the stock market, like, I'm never gonna like put all my money in stocks. I'm gonna be safe. I'm gonna pay down debt. I'm never gonna. Well, here's the thing. You know what happens with inflation too? So there's a lot of things that inflation is just like, how many letters? 8, maybe? Yeah, I think it's 8. It's like a 4-letter word, but it's really 8. But it's really a compilation of printing more paper. Right? The federal government just keeps printing. And that's how the debt just keeps getting higher and higher. And you guys are really smart, so like I'm throwing it all out there. The stuff that you don't talk about in real estate. But then also the Fed says, okay, we have to release the hold on rate and let the rate go up. That has nothing to do with mortgages, guys. That's like a secondary thing that's mutually exclusive. But when the rate goes up, what happens to your car loan? What happens to your credit card? What happens to when you borrow for furniture, you want to go on vacation? When you use your credit card to buy goods, it all costs more, right? Yeah, but bananas already cost more, milk already costs more, gas already costs more. So now you're swiping your credit card, and you know, we all saw it on Facebook and Instagram, like the $63 is now like $120. But you only have $90 because you budgeted for 63 and you had a little money for savings. So now you don't have any savings, but you can still afford 90, but you can't afford 120. You can't have unlimited money. And don't get me wrong, some people in this room, you guys may have unlimited money. That's great, but your clients don't, okay? This is for us and our own families, but also for our clients. So I'm talking to you in real life, like what's happening in real time. If a family's being good, discerning stewards of their dollars, regardless if you have $50 in the bank account or 50 million, you've budgeted, right? And the money is going to bills, and the money is going to your kids, and it's going to your mortgage, and it's going to tithing, and it's going to investing, and it's going to retirement. Well, when you can't pay for gas, you shut down the retirement. But you put it on a credit card at first, but you stop the retirement, you do both. The challenge is now you put the $120 on the credit card because you only have $90. And now the credit card bill has gone up because the rate has gone up. See where we're going here? Now, the good news is all that stuff is happening because the economy is prosperous. Like, people don't raise rates in a mortgage company, in a business. They don't raise prices because no one wants something. They raise prices and rates because they can. So in a vacuum, you'd be like, yeah, the economy's soaring. Like, I'm reading online, I hear this all the time. When inflation's high, real estate's the best investment. Yes. Yes. If you're gonna be in your home in 10 years, it'll be worth more than it is today. That's really good news. It's 100% absolute. And I've been saying for about a year and a half now that the real estate market is gonna be like, which is going to do like really soon, guys. I mean, that's like kind of like precursor for an hour from now, but like it's really obvious, The only thing, in January we talked about how the housing market's the last thing to go down, because stocks can go up and down tomorrow, right? They can go up and down today. The stock market can just get bad news from overseas. COVID starts ramping back up, investors pull out. Ukraine, Russia attacks Ukraine, investors sell. Secondary investors see the Warren Buffetts and Elon Musk selling, then they sell. And then the average person, their advisor said, well, everyone else selling, you should buy. And you're like, I kind of freaked out. That means I'm going to sell even more. Now, you really should be buying when people are selling. That means it's going down. But what do? Warren Buffett said that Americans love to buy high and sell low. That's what we do. Like, right now, it's not cool to sell your house. Right now, it's cool to buy houses, right? Because like, oh man, I just won the bidding war with 18 other people, and everyone loves to puff their chest out. But what happens is, like, that's not like what we really should be doing. I mean, technically, if you're not paying cash and getting a great deal, you better be locking in a 30-year fix. If you lock in a 30-year fix, the good news is it's fixed for life, and over time, that's a great loan. But like, don't overpay right now for real estate. I mean, real estate has gone up 100% in 6 years. That's on a macro scale. We'll get to micro in a minute. I'm still going through the variables, guys. I hope you're almost losing me right now. I hope you're like almost like, well, it's kind of like we're lifting off, Leon, and we're lifting up in the sky. Like, you don't really need to look at the window. I don't really like to fly. I do it a lot, but I don't really like it. So I just don't look outside. I just know where I'm going to end up. So the goal here is to get to the destination of like pulling it all together. Like, I just don't want a lot of turbulence. I'll try not to make it too rocky. I just want to get up in the clouds and just be smooth. But you don't need to know like every turn. Like, okay, now we're ending up in Texas, but why are we heading to DC? It doesn't really matter, right? Like, it doesn't really matter why. What I'm telling you is what happens with these whys. Well, it doesn't matter why you go into DC before Texas. You're going to land in Texas, I promise you. But what I want you to hear is, like, if you were the pilot and you said, well, to get to Texas, I have to go just southwest. You don't understand how a plane works and other planes work. You like crash, or like you are too low or too high, and the winds take you. Like, there's reasons why. You don't need to know because you're not the pilot, but you're the pilot in real estate. Does that make sense? So you do need to realize sometimes you have to look up to DC before you can get down to Texas. The average person, including myself when I was a kid, my boys right now, if I said we're going to Texas, they're like, oh yeah, we're going southwest. That's like where we are going. Well, first of all, if you just go southwest, you end up in Mexico, or you end up in like Alabama. You have to like first get to Texas and go backwards. So that's the next thing is we're gonna like look forward to go backwards. I'm throwing a lot at you guys on purpose because this is important, guys. Is this important? The best doctors in the world have no idea what's wrong with you, even if you tell them. The best doctors in the world, you say you have a headache, they're like, it might take months before we actually know what's wrong. We have to do tons of tests. We have to know what your pre-existing conditions are and your family history. We have to know, like what your trauma is. We have to know like physical conditions, like internally. We have to know so much, and we have to do a lot of tests. So there's a lot of diagnostics that have to happen before you can know like what's going to happen in the housing market. That's why we're kind of unpacking this. You can't just be like, well, stock market goes down, real estate goes down. Well, a lot of people are going to tell you that when stock market goes down, real estate goes up because you got to move your money somewhere, right? And you hear all these things. I mean, really, a lot of it's hyperbole, some of it's truth. Guys, there's truth in everything, and it's all conjecture. It's like, you can say in your marriage, like, I'm running late. And then you can get home a minute late or 3 hours late. And if you get home a minute late, you're probably fine if you set that expectation. You get home 3 hours late, it's like, well, I said I was running late. I mean, like, it's just a game, but this is like real life. Inflation long-term is good for real estate, guys. Rising prices is good for real estate. Printing more money is bad for everything except for real estate. Long-term, there's a reason that real estate long-term always goes up. It doubles every 10 years. Right now it's doubling every 5 years. It's going too fast because people are overpaying because they're buying on emotion. You know, it's funny, we just had a house that appraised and it was way overpriced. You know what the appraiser asked? The appraiser said, how many offers do you have? And the gut reaction is to be like, ooh, we only had one. I don't want them to think the market's going down. Like, no, it's amazing. We puff our chest out. Yeah, we only had one, and we got that much money. That means it's worth it. When you get a bidding war, that means that, like, yeah, maybe your seller's happy, but the buyer overpaid. I mean, if we're being honest, unless you won because you had higher dealings fee or you had a relationship with the other side, you know, like you had some way to add value, peace of mind. But an appraiser doesn't want to hear it's a bidding war, guys. That just means that you're overpaying. It just means that like emotions kicked in and Princess Diana Beanie Babies worth $3,000 and now they're on like marketplace for like $1.50. Am I wrong? I mean, think about it. So yes, guys, long term, inflation right now is at 8.5%. It should be about 3%. Long term, inflation's amazing for real estate. You know what happens first? People foreclose on their houses after they do forbearance because they can't pay their light bill. And you know what happens before they even shut off their light bill? Their cell phone, well, actually their cell phone never gets shut off. It's the last thing they, you know, their Domino's on Friday night and cell phone and cable never gets shut off. But everything else does. Long-term, inflation is healthy because it slows the market, and then long-term, the market pushes through that. Do you guys remember if anyone was in real estate or if you were a buyer when they had like the $7,500 tax credit and the $8,000 tax credit like in 2009? You guys remember the stimulus checks a year ago? When you're getting free money, like this is not a political conversation, but you're gonna pay for it in the future, and we're paying for it now because people's activities don't change. Teresa's our mortgage expert. Teresa, how many of those people took all those dollars and put it in their savings account? 0? One human? Maybe not? Not many? Teresa's saying no, unfortunately. And so they're like, where's my stimulus checks? Like the stimulus checks are gone. Where's my forbearance? Forbearance is over, right? You couldn't make your payment for 4 months in forbearance, but now I'm gonna have 6 month payments out of nowhere now that inflation's kicked in. And what happens with forbearance when that runs out?
Well, various things, but yeah, I mean, there's so much equity, nobody's walking away, so.
So then they sell, right? They can't afford their payment? Do you guys understand that? Like, I'm fast forwarding, I'm gonna keep rewinding fast forwarding, but when people, to Teresa's point, the good news, this is not doom and gloom, but there is a lot I'm gonna share. In real time, a lot of people were going the forbearance route during the pandemic, especially late last year, and if they couldn't make their $1,500 payment on 4 months, $6,000, they didn't have $7,500 on month 5. Does it make sense? That's just like, this is all like logic, right? Because their habits never really changed. But even if they did change, they didn't have $1,500 in June, and they didn't have $1,500 in July, and they didn't have $1,500 in August. They also didn't have $1,500 in September. So in October, they didn't have $7,500. Does that make sense? To Teresa's point, back in the day, they would just default, and the banks would eventually foreclose on them. The good news now is they have equity. So what do you think they're doing? Their house is coming on the market, which means supply starts picking up. Another thing is 2 years ago, the stock market, like I said, the stock market in the last 5 years has grown almost double gold, when gold actually over the last 20 years has grown almost 40% more. Now here's the thing, which one of those is logic, which one's emotion? No one buys gold on emotion. And then some people right now are kind of scared because they actually see what's happening, right? It's actually a good investment. Silver is actually really low. But like gold and silver are really good investments because it's bartered around the world and it's something that's just like true, and over time, inflation really helps gold. But so stocks are just too high. And so what do people do? They pull their money out of stocks and they move it to cash. Or they move it to just spending. They pull the cash and they put it in spending. And during the pandemic, people spent a lot. They spent their stimulus checks, they spent their cash. They spent on credit cards because they had low rates, and they did HELOCs. They did all that good stuff. Well, right now, the pandemic is essentially over. And what's happening now is there's people in 2020 that wanted to sell that are now selling. And there's people in 2021 that wanted to sell that are now getting ready to sell. And there's people in 2022 that want to sell, and we're in 2022 and they can finally allow it to sell. You guys remember the 6 months you couldn't even open a door? Do you know how many sellers in the last 3 years have been wanting to sell, and it's all happening now? It's all happening now, guys. If you look on the MLS, any community, start with your own and then go out, you will see coming soons outpacing actives, and you'll see coming soon actives outpacing pendings. You'll see a year ago an inverted correlation. You will see a year ago there was 0 actives and coming soons to 2 to 4 pendings. Remember years ago we did that class, Brandy, about like the actives versus pendings? And we're like, look guys, like, you know, they're pretty even. You know, actives are gonna pull down and, you know, and pendings are gonna go up, which is really good, but then it's gonna go the opposite way. Well, we're starting to see that now in real time. So now I'm fast forwarding to today, and I'm gonna go back in time again to show you why this is happening. We'll keep kind of going back and forth. You know, like you're sitting on the plane on the way to your destination, you look at how many miles you have to go, and then you go back to playing on your phone or reading. And then you ask how much longer, and then you go back to what you're doing. You look at the miles, so you kind of want to know where you're going, then you want to kind of know where you came from, and then you kind of want to know where you are. Real estate's moving in real time, but why is that? Well, the stock market's down 10 to 30% year to date. In January it was at an all-time high, now it's down 10 to 30%. So the bad news is that some people are selling because they're getting worried that we're too high. Other people are selling because inflation, when I go back to inflation, I'm showing a lot of ramifications of inflation, because the average investor, like most people in this room, just kind of buy stock, they buy and sell, they put into retirement, and they pulled back on retirement, right? They're like, well, I need more money for gas, I need more money for bread, I need more money for milk. And so the stock market kind of pulls down. Well, it's also come down for 2 other reasons. One, all the big investors that didn't sell everything last year are now selling everything. They're like, okay, we see the writing on the wall. Like the really smart people, like the multi-billionaires around the world, like have like watched things and they don't overcomplicate things like all of us. They're like, wait a minute, inflation's through the roof, we're printing paper, like no one can afford to buy anything, stocks are gonna go down. Well, how are those related? Guys, stocks are directly related to earnings. And if prices go up, the company loses money. Supermarkets can only raise the price of bread so much. What happens is they buy the loaf of bread for $1.50 and they sell it for $3. Well, the loaf of bread now goes to $3 for them. They can't break even, they have to make money. So they push it to $4. But then it costs them $4 and they try to push it to $5 and the consumer says no, right? The consumer says no. The consumer says, I'm gonna go on Amazon, I'm gonna try to get it cheaper here. I'm gonna start pulling back and I'm gonna buy less. And so then the grocery, I mean, you know grocery stores, Marissa. And so then the grocery store says, okay, we'll kind of pull back a little bit on that. And then they say, well, inflation's coming back down. So now I'm getting to real time what's happening, guys. Like now inflation this month might go down 0.2 of a point. That's great, let's celebrate. No, it's not that great. It means 8.5 went to 8.3. We're still more than double where we need to be. And it means people can't afford bread anymore. It means interest rates with the Fed raise the rate. They're trying to pay for gas, they're putting it all on credit. You see what's happening here? And so what happens is people are buying less at the grocery store. Because there's only 2 options, guys. You either have unlimited funds and your clients have unlimited funds and they just talk about how the bill's getting higher, or they do that once or twice and they go home to their husband or wife and they say, let's talk about this. Our bill's usually $150, now it's $270. Are we gonna keep spending $270? Well, we can, but then our kids can't go to soccer and baseball. I mean, we can, but then do we quit the cable? Okay, well, I don't live in everyone's house. I don't know if they pull down their grocery bill or they quit the soccer and the cable. But if they quit the cable, what happens to those company stocks? And they quit the soccer, what happens to that? And they pull back and grow. You see where I'm going with this? And so right now, guys, what's happening is the stock market's going down because people that are in this room are like, yeah, it makes sense. I bought this, Tesla stock and it's split like 17 times and it's still worth more today after all the splits, which when it's split, it goes in half, and then it doubles again, and then it goes in half, and it doubles again, and it goes in half, and doubles again. So just the average investor is like, it's way too high. But then you're like, okay, well, the owner of Tesla said the economy's gonna crash, so I mean, he's gonna cut off 10%. So if we actually pay attention, like that's probably gonna happen, because he's not that stupid, regardless if you agree with him or not, like he's proven a lot of things, he sends people to the moon. But all kidding aside, most people are like selling stock now. They're not selling stock, guys. They're not selling stock because they're day traders. We're selling stock because we need money to pay for everyday things that are all costing more. Like your water bill goes up, everything goes up. So let's talk about real estate for a second. We'll just keep backing up and then fast forwarding. Inflation, like I said, is 8.5 right now, guys. And a year ago, it was at 5%. Everyone said it's really high. If you remember back in January, we talked about how it's going to keep going up. It's going to get to 8 or 9%, which is where we are. Historically, it's been at 2%. The only time it was negative was 2009. You know what happened in 2009? Everything crashed. We're far from a crash. Like we'll never see a crash, at least not in Charlotte. The good news about Charlotte is even when the real estate market goes down, New York City gets a crash. The Bay Area gets a crash. Chicago gets a crash. Houston gets a crash. Miami gets a crash. the really, really uber expensive areas that are a combination of overpriced homes that don't commensurate with salaries as well as second homes get destroyed. Like if someone wants to buy a second home, it's about to go down 30, 40%. It's just obvious, right? Like, again, if you just peel it all back, when things start costing more on both price and rate, all the things that you don't need, all the non-necessities, all the non-commodities, like anything you don't have to have just goes away. Like the luxury car, the second homes. Everyone was buying second homes and luxury cars during the pandemic. Why? Because they had free money and there was nothing, well, everyone had free money. Everyone, because rates were really low, right? Mortgages were at all-time lows. Hopefully everyone refinanced and bought their home then. So everyone had all-time low rates. Rates are money, guys. Regardless, when the Fed raises and lowers the rate, a lot of times people say, oh, mortgage rates went up. Mortgage rates have nothing to do. I mean, they could have a correlation, but mortgage rates and when the Fed moves the rate have nothing to do with each other. Like they are mutually exclusive. There is some correlation because it means that the market is just too hot and they need to like cool it down, if that makes sense. So on the surface, you celebrate the rates are going up. You celebrate that prices are going up. You celebrate that nothing's affordable anymore until you're on the other side. Like if you're retiring right now, like on one hand you feel really good and you're celebrating, then you're like, wait a minute, but I'm not dying tomorrow. Hopefully no one's dying for a very long time. Think about that, like I'm gonna sell now, but what does everyone say? Well, I'd love to sell, but where am I gonna go? That's life, guys. Like the grocery store is like, well, I'll just keep raising prices. Yeah, but it's costing us more. The builder's like, well, I'll just keep raising prices. Yeah, but it's costing us more. Like who's paying all this? So we look back in time, the stock market, guys, the stock market was running up and running up and running up and running up and running up. After 2019, it had doubled already before this last few years. If you remember, in March of 2020, guys, now I'm getting into real time again on stocks. So if you notice, we're going back in time, 10, 20 years, and we're looking at today in different variables. We're going back in time, looking today in real estate. We're going to compare each thing to real estate to talk about where we are today versus everything else in the world. Because everything else in the world matters more than real estate. See, most people already have a home. So like they have a home they own, but they really kind of want another bedroom. They have a home they own, but they really want a pool. They have a home they own, but the kids are older, so now they want a master on a different floor. They have a home they own, but they kind of want a little more land. They don't need a new home. Is that fair? Now, rental rates will go up forever because if someone doesn't buy, they rent, and when someone buys, they rent, right? Like, I mean, because they buy as an investor. And there's some good news I'm going to share in a little bit, but I just want to keep going deeper and deeper into what's going on right now. In 2020, in March, guys, the beginning of the pandemic, as soon as the pandemic happened, does anyone know what happened to the stock market? It got decimated. It had the two worst days in history. Both of the days, it was like Monday and Wednesday. I know one was Monday. I don't know if it was Wednesday or Thursday off the top of my head, but that doesn't really matter. It was like 5,000 point drop in the Dow in 2 days. It was more than the Great Depression, Black Monday. Do you know why that happened? Because the stock market was too high in 2020. Do you know how much higher the stock market is in the beginning of this year than it was in 2020? The stock market just kept going, guys. Housing market just kept going. Everything that is happening with economic variables in the US and around the world today should have happened this time 2 years ago. January 2022 is January 2020. We had a pause. And during that pause, everyone like shifted. The right side of the brain for everyone was like, oh yeah, I want to own a home again. No, I wish everyone had the American dream of owning a home again, like back in the 1950s. And that has come back for some, which is awesome. That's why we have good news to share about real estate. But there's other things too. It's not bad news. Like when prices go down, buyers actually get back in. Like bidding wars are not good. Like even sellers don't like bidding wars. It causes stress. They start wondering if they underpriced the home. They wonder if they picked the wrong person. People are disappointed. You really want 1 to 2 buyers for every home. Do you know that 70%, National Association of Realtors just came out with a stat that 70% of buyers in 2022 have buyer's remorse right now? And so the fact that we're starting to see less bidding wars is actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing, guys. And even for the seller, it's a good thing because they can see what their home's really worth. The equilibrium value of a home right now, they're saying in America, in the United States of America, is about 48% lower than where we are. There's about a 48% bump, which makes sense because like when sporting events started coming back and they had seats separated where 50,000 people in Bank of America Stadium is now 7,000, what happened to ticket prices? They went through the roof. What do you think ticket prices will be this year? Back down. Not because people don't want to go to Panther games, but because there's more options. So prices aren't going down on stocks because there's more options. Prices are going down in stocks because there's more options. And it's not stock options, it's gas or stock. I'll pick gas. It's invest in stock or bread. I'll pick bread. It's invest in stock or pay my water bill. I'll pay my water bill. You see where I'm going with this? That extra, like, I'm gonna buy the luxury SUV, I'm gonna buy the Range Rover. No, you have other options now. It's called, like, keep my water bill going, keep my lights on. Does that make sense? So in 2020, guys, in March 2020, the stock market did exactly what it should have done. And it crashed. And it crashed because it was too high. And now it's doing this. And it's starting to go down. And it's down 10 to 30 points. And guys, here's the thing. 10 points on the Dow is not that much. 30 on the NASDAQ is a lot, but it has a lot of room to go. And the reason why I say that is we're still, outside of last year, we're higher than we were in 2020 when it crashed. And so what do you think happens to people when they're looking to buy a home when their 100,000 stocks goes down to 80? When their $1 million retirement account goes down to 700? Well, they kind of pull back on what their ceiling is, right? And then you look at interest rates. Interest rates have almost doubled. The mortgage interest rates have almost doubled. Do you know that a year ago today, rates were half? Like, rates are still like 2.6 this time last year. Last year, guys, not like 4 years ago. The sticker shock of mortgage rates, they're still really low, like right around 5%. But they were so low for so long. Okay, so rates were so low for so long that, like, it's going to take a while for people to realize that 5% is a great rate. Well, rates should have went up a long time ago because home prices went through the roof since 2010. 2010 was actually the bottom, not 9. At 9, it was just like, there's a lot of parts of the country that things were going down in 6, 7, and 8. Charlotte kind of felt it in late 08 going to 2009. But 2010 was kind of like the macroeconomic bottom. And so like 10 and 11, 10 was the bottom. It went like this and like 7, 8, 9, 10, and then it started coming back. So it's been going up since 2011. And there's a recession every 7 years. And we'll talk about that in a minute. We're kind of getting back to today, but going back to time first. So stock market's gone up for 11 years. And so stocks are still way too high. When one change in the world impacts something, like the housing market didn't get impacted by Ukraine. It didn't get impacted by the mass shootings. It doesn't get impacted by other horrible, horrific events like child trafficking. These horrific things that may make a decision for one of us and our loved ones doesn't impact the housing market. It's too global, and it's not liquid. But it does impact the stock market, which then trickles down to everything else. But here's the thing, the stock market needed to get corrected, guys. A stock market correction is only 10%, and we haven't seen a 10% correction in 13 years. It's supposed to correct every 7. Does that make sense? There's a recession every 7 years. Now, a recession used to be 2 straight quarters of negative GDP. We just had one, if you guys know, we had 2 things. We had a negative GDP quarter last quarter. We're probably gonna have another one. You guys can tell me what you think, but like in a month from then. Actually, the end of this month will be the second quarter, right? And if it's a negative GDP quarter, that technically means that we are in a recession. You hear a lot of politicians and economists saying, like, I think we're gonna go into a recession, or like we may be in a recession, or maybe we're not in a recession. Well, if you look at the old definition of a recession, it's 2 straight quarters of negative GDP. And the challenge with that is that the politicians will tell you on both sides of the aisle that you don't know you're in a recession until after you're coming out of it, because it's always in arrears, right? It's always lagging what's happening. Well, we know we had one quarter, and things don't just change overnight. What's happened in the last quarter? Stock market's gone down more. Why is stock market going down more? Because consumer confidence is at like a 5-year low. Consumer confidence is at a 5-year low because what do people talk about? Is there anything people talk about more, like universally right now, at least in this part of the world, on the western side, than gas prices? I mean, it's not even funny anymore, guys. Like, but for the average family with a $50,000 income, they are now like fighting the poverty line. The poverty line is like doubled. It's not funny. Like gas prices, if you budget, if you have $1 million in your bank account, or if you have $1,000 in your bank account, anything doubling that you can't control the outcome of, well, I just won't drive. Well, then you just don't go to work. But the stimulus checks are going away, so you have to go to work. And so unemployment's at all-time low. Well, unemployment's at all-time low because no one wants to work. It doesn't mean that unemployment's at all-time low. It means that people aren't trying to get jobs. Unemployment is number of employers and open positions and number of applicants. Well, people are just not applying for jobs right now, and I'm not telling everyone to like stop working. Please work. We need to get back to a new norm. But the stock market needed to correct in 2020. But what happened, guys? It had those 2 days that like was 5,000 points in 2 days. That's almost 20% in 2 days, guys. 10% overall before it comes back is a correction. 20% is a depression, right? Well, it came right back. Americans humans in general have such short-term attention span. Well, why'd that happen? That happened because everyone from an economic standpoint was very fragile, where like something like that is devastating because inflation was too low. And so companies were making all this money, but people didn't have salary increases. They had jobs, but they couldn't afford because their home prices were too high. Home prices have affected everything. I mean, anyone who's been in real estate, has everyone been in real estate at least 3 years? Not everyone, but a lot of you. If you haven't been in real estate in 3 years, did you own a home 3 years ago? So Teresa said it earlier, guys. If you own a home from more than 3 years, you're like in the top 5% of America right now, from a wealth standpoint. You could sell your home and go to rent, and you have more wealth than most Americans. That's great news. The bad news is like, if you don't do anything with it, or if it goes down, it kind of goes away. But go back to March 2020. March 2020, the stock market crashed. And that should have changed everything. That should have affected the housing market. That should have kept rates down on the mortgage rate. That should have had the Fed say, whoa, okay, the economy is crashing right now. We actually had a recession right after that, but no one was paying attention. And so the media had much more important things to talk about, rightfully so, with the pandemic. So the market crashed in early March. That was real time, guys. The stock market is real time. When something catastrophic happens in the world like the pandemic, everyone freaks out because they've never seen before, right? Fear is, uncertainty. When you can't be certain of something you've never seen. And so everyone sells. That's the only, there's nothing that is more obvious than when the stock market goes up or down, because everyone can do it. And with social media, you can communicate with the world so quickly. And then you have like these big hedge funds that they actually have triggers in place where if it goes down at 500 points, if it goes down 5%, they're out. So it automatically goes down. So what happens in the next round? We're like, well, they're selling. What happens is then they buy the next day. That's actually what happened, just so you guys know. Like they sell it goes down 2,000, next day they buy right back. But what do? It goes down 2,000, then we sell, right? And we sell to them who buy back. We don't have enough money in this room to make up for the investors out there that are controlling the stock market. In short term, when they don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic, everyone sells because they want to control their money. When they don't know what's going to happen with potential World War III, everyone sells because they want to control their money. And then what the rest of the consumers do is they follow suit. Technically, that's when you're supposed to buy. But you don't have the ability to buy when you're worried about how to make your mortgage payment that has now had a forbearance for 4 months, and gas prices are higher, and bread prices are higher, and utility prices are higher, and everyone has a job, but no one's getting raises because we're talking about how the economy is not doing as well as people think, and now rates are higher. So people are paying higher rate on their credit card and their student loans, unless that all goes away, and they're paying higher rate on their mortgage. You see what's happening here? And so March 2020, guys, I keep going back to March 2020 because March 2020 is today. March 2020 is maybe March 2022. We're in June, but it's today. Because the last 2 years didn't exist. I mean, they did, but they didn't. They existed from a tragic standpoint. They existed from a life learning standpoint, but they didn't exist from an economic standpoint. In March 2020, when investors all sold, they didn't sell because companies weren't making money. They sold because they were freaked out about what the pandemic was going to do to the economy. Then sellers pulled back because they're like, well, I can't sell my house. I mean, there's nowhere to go today, guys. There was nowhere to go 2 years ago. You weren't even allowed to go anywhere. So no one sold, right? Well, what does that push for demand? The people that wanted to buy. And the people that didn't want to buy, still buy. Because there's no supply. And then people are like, oh, wow, I need to do something now. Because now I'm fearful of prices going up. Does that make sense? Some people have demand and some people have supply-driven demand. The supply went away, so then you have all these people buying homes. They see the stock market is volatile. And so in 2020 and 2021, what do? They put their money back in real estate. Well, the stock market didn't crash because earnings were low. They were talking about a crash in that short little period because of uncertainty of the pandemic. Then things kind of stabilized, and it's still horrible and it still stinks, the pandemic, but we're like, okay, we're gonna have to live with this. Stock market just goes back on track, but now everyone's money is going to their house. It's going to their house either to buy a more expensive home and more down payment they never expected, or it's going to their house to renovate the home because they're not going anywhere, right? They're living in their home, they're working in their home, they're schooling in their home. Let's keep going with this. So the stock market didn't crash because the economy said it was going to crash. The stock market crashed because the investors that move it up moved it down, and then it came right back in. Well, where are we today? The stock market is starting to come down. In January, it was really obvious the stock market was going to come down because now the stock market has to crash, right? And guys, a crash is not Chicken Little. A crash feels like it when it happens over 2 days. But a crash is just, a correction is 10%, a crash is more like 18 to 20%. Well, depending on what indicator you look at, the S&P and the NASDAQ are already down that much. It's already happened. And so you can ask yourself, do you think we're at the bottom of the stock market? It doesn't really matter. The question here is, what does it mean to your clients? What does it mean to your clients that are looking to retire in the next 5 years? And what does it mean for your clients that are looking to upgrade in the next 5 years? Well, if they're looking to retire in the next 5 years, their stock portfolio just went down 10 to 30%, depending on if it's the Dow or the NASDAQ or the S&P in the middle. And if they're looking to upgrade in the next 5 years, well, shoot, when you hear someone say, I'm just going to save for the next 2 years and buy the house, you cannot save as fast as the housing prices have gone up. There's no one that can save. The stock market didn't go up as high as the housing market, and savings accounts were negative. And you know why they were almost negative? Because the rate has gone up. So you can't save right now, you can't borrow right now because that's up, and stock market's going down. So what does that mean for the consumer? Well, everyone's moving to Charlotte. I know, everyone's moving to Charlotte. Let's just agree with that for a second. Let's just agree to disagree that everyone's moving to Charlotte. I mean, people are moving to Nashville, they're moving to Austin, they're moving to Dallas-Fort Worth. People are moving to Tampa. People are moving to Albuquerque, New Mexico. They're moving to Seattle. People are even moving overseas to London. They're moving all over the country. I know that because the only reason they move to those places is they come from somewhere else. And where they come from somewhere else, they have to sell the house there. So I'm from New York City, and I don't want to go back. I'll visit. It's a great city to visit. And but if no one buys in New York City, what happens to people buying in Charlotte? They may still move here, but they're going to rent, right? Or they may not move here because someone has to buy their home. So if everyone's moving to Charlotte, where are they coming from? Well, they're coming from New York. They're coming from Ohio, and they're coming from the Bay Area, right? Isn't 9 out of 10 people moving to Charlotte coming from one of those 3 places? I mean, doesn't everyone there's 11 people from Charlotte, but everyone else, isn't everyone else from the Bay Area, Northern California, the Rust Belt, or New York, New Jersey, and right? Well, here's the thing, they only get here if they sell there. And they're not selling to avatars, they're selling to humans, which means people are still buying there. Which means this hyperbole that we put out into the universe as realtors in Charlotte, North Carolina, that the whole world's moving here. We're one of the 10 most overvalued cities. I remember when I moved here because I want to get away from the rat race. My mom had just passed. I grew up in New York City. I lived in DC, worked on the Hill. And I'm like, well, Charlotte has beautiful weather and the cost of living is low. Well, Charlotte still has pretty nice weather. We're not that much more expensive than Austin, or we're pretty similar to Austin and Dallas. Yeah, people in overseas actually know where Austin is. Half of Silicon Valley has moved to Austin. Charlotte's great. We're one of the top 10, 15 best cities in the country. We're not this isn't heaven. It's a great place to live. It doesn't mean that people will pay $3 million for an $800,000 home, right? Do you know that $3 million homes today were 800 to a million a few years ago? You're no, they weren't. Okay. Well, there was foreclosures back then. Maybe it was 1.3, 1.4. The foreclosure was what, 600, 700? Where are all the foreclosures? Now, to Teresa's point, they're not out there right now because everyone has equity. So what happens when someone has forbearance? What happens when someone has a lower stock market portfolio? What happens when someone's job isn't paying them an increase in salary? Because they can't pay them an increase in salary because a company isn't making the same amount of money because they're paying everyone an increase in salary, and they're paying more for everything. They're paying more for labor, they're paying more for rent, they're paying more for goods, they're paying more for everything. You guys know about lumber, but do you know about labor? Actually, if you want to buy stock, you should buy stock in energy, because energy already got depleted. Labor is about to get depleted. I mean, if you own Walmart or Target stock, if you own stock in anything that has lots of labor, probably Amazon, Tesla, the reason why it's going to go down is they have so much labor. You know, like if someone makes $40,000 a year and inflation's 9%, do the math. 9%, you have to give them an extra $3,600 to make the same this year as last year, but that's not including the things that they actually do direct consumer that aren't tracked in inflation. So let's talk about real estate for a minute again. So March 2020, guys, March 2020, pandemic starts, no one sells their house. Where are those people now? They're going on the market. March 2021, no one sells their house. Where are those people right now? They're going on the market right now too. Strategy-wise, by the way, total sidebar, if you're gonna go on the market and you have a listing coming up, don't go on the market same time as everyone else. Like just hold off. Like we just did that last week, we do it all the time. Like just be the expert, guys. You know, be the expert. If someone is gonna be on the market this year, they're gonna be on the market this year. And so you have 3 years worth of pent-up supply hitting the market, like right now. Like right now, like pick a community you live in, and I'm telling you, go look at the MLS and look at coming soons and actives today versus even 3 months ago. Look at coming soons and actives 3 months ago versus 6 months ago, and it's night and day. Even 3 months ago is night and day from today, because 3 months ago, the stock market was just starting to decline, and interest rates were still in the threes, right? And the Fed hadn't released a hold on rate yet. Like credit card rates, and you could still borrow, but everything now. And cars, since when did our cars, oh yeah, cars are a great investment, cars are a great investment. Holy cow, guys, like social media, we need to get off of the news and media. Like cars are not a good investment. Like use it to get from point A to point B. Okay, but like, and if you don't need your car right now, sell your car because it's worth more than it should be. It's not worth that. But there's just pent up demand. It's all gonna go away, right? Like pent up demand. And again, this is not Chicken Little, because here's the thing, here's the good news. Here's the good news. If you wanna buy a car in 3 to 6 months, this holiday season is gonna be a disaster. This holiday season, you're gonna see people pulling back. They're already having the conversations at home. Hey kids, we're gonna have a wonderful Christmas and we're gonna have a great Hanukkah, but it's not about the gifts. It's about the fact that we have less money. And you're seeing it on the news. You know what it means? I mean, if you have kids, like teach your kids. You see what happens when gas doubles? It means you're gonna get one less Lego set. You're not gonna get as many video games. We're gonna cut our vacation short. Do you know how much vacations have gone up? Everything's gone up. Now, stock market, what does that mean? It means it crashes because prices can't go up. Stock market's not gonna celebrate when prices go up. Consumers do not celebrate when prices go up, which means companies don't celebrate. You know, companies want prices low. There's no company in the world, including Ritz-Carlton and Tesla, that wants prices to be high. If it's high for the consumer, demand goes down. If it's high for the consumer, it's high for the company. If it's high for the company, it's high for the end user. Everyone wants prices to go down, and they will. So if you're gonna buy a car, I'd hold off. Actually, you know, to be honest, if you're gonna buy anything right now, you shouldn't. Like, I don't know of one thing that I can imagine outside of silver that I would buy right now. Do you know that silver has gone down, like, it had a little bump 3 years ago, but outside that, it's gone down for 7 years. And silver is almost 1/100th of what gold is. And silver is easily tradable, and it's liquid, and just no one wants it. It's not like cool, right? You can't like look online and print a statement of your silver. I mean, it's so true. Like we always do, like what everyone else is doing. But silver is at like $20 an ounce right now, so it's really easy to obtain. But they predict that it's going to go up tenfold in the next 5 years because it's just so inexpensive, and the dollar is going away. And the dollar's going away, guys. Like the dollar is down probably 15% in the last year. No one uses cash anymore. You know, the way of the world, the dollar has gone down so much, probably more than that. If you fast forward a year, guys, you know how like you're listening to this and hopefully this is helpful. You kind of go back and you look at your notes, you listen to the recording again, like, oh, I didn't hear it that way. It's kind of like you go to a class and you go 3 years in a row and you hear something different each time. That's the economy, guys. Like what we're talking about right now is what's happening in the economy, but it's almost so obvious in our face that like we just aren't paying attention. So it's called the state of the market, but I have to like unpack the other variables to talk about the housing market. But let's talk about the housing market for a minute if we can. In 2019, the housing market was at an all-time high. It had grown about 130% since 2010. Not 2009. 2010 was when it started going back up. Hit a bottom in the beginning of the year and it started going back up. There was tons of foreclosures in 2008 and 9. The whole country had gone down. But in 2010, you saw like New York City was coming back. And by the way, Charlotte lags New York City and California. You know, Charlotte lags Southern Florida. I mean, we don't go down as far as they do, Las Vegas, and we don't go up as high. Does that make sense? But do you know in the last 10 years, Charlotte's got up more than every city that's measured outside of 5? Like, we're not inexpensive anymore. We're wonderful. It's a great place to live. We have one of the most diverse workforces in the country, which is why we're always gonna be a popular place to live. But again, not everyone's moving to Charlotte. Not everyone is immune to inflation. Not everyone is Teflon to interest rates, right? Like interest rates go, I saw something last night when I was doing some extra last minute homework, make sure I'm not missing anything, and a $500,000 loan is up like $135 a month right now. Not the life of loan or even just a year, but a month. You're like, well, what's $135? Well, shoot, you just said what's $65 on gas. Well, shoot, you just said like what's an extra $1,000 on a vacation. You see where we're going here? I don't know about you, but my clients don't all have unlimited money. And so it's just like, depending on where you start. So what happens is if someone makes, a family of four makes $75,000 after taxes, that's why, by the way, you know the economy is not doing as well as they want to tell you, and no one talks about taxes. There's no politician in the world that will talk about raising taxes. Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, doesn't matter who you are, there's no one in the United States, no one around the world talking about taxes right now. They're not. First of all, there's bigger issues to talk about, and the economy can't handle it. But you can't talk about taxes. You can't talk about corporate taxes, which is always popular, right? Because no one wants, just bring down the corporations. They're not paying enough in taxes. They're not talking about corporate taxes. They're not talking about the billionaires, the 1%. No one's talking about taxes. Have you noticed that? No one's talking about taxes. It's because they're like, okay, that's a non-starter. Because no one wants that. Because they're like, we can't pay our own bills. Again, family of four. Let's just do real math right now, guys. We've thrown a lot of things out there, and now I kind of want to start bringing it together and go into housing, which is why we're all here. It's all important, so you don't just tell someone to buy or sell. I'll tell you something, I'll beat myself up for a minute. So I hate sales, and I really believe if someone said like David's a taker, that would ruin me. I would leave real estate. I would literally just go live under a rock. And in 2005, 6, and 7, I was just coming out of being an economist, and I'd watch the Case and Shiller S&P index every month. And I probably was sending you that stuff, man. And I would send oh, Charlotte went up again. It went from 3.5 to 4%. It went from 4 to 4.3. That's how much housing prices are going up. Buy now, prices are going up. Buy now, prices going up. And now I realize I'm like the late night infomercial. You don't get one, you get two. It's not a $49.99, it's $39. I'm like, holy cow, I hate sales. I had no idea. It's just the Case and Shiller S&P housing index looks at the top 20 cities, with Charlotte's one of them, and it looks at year over year median home prices. It doesn't do mean. You know the difference. Mean is average, median is middle. Don't ever look at anything in life in averages, guys. Don't look at anything in life in averages. Because if you have 3 kids and one's 3 feet tall and one's 5 feet tall, then their average is 4 feet. You know what I mean? And but really one's 3 and one's 5. But with median, and actually I guess if you only have 3 kids, median would be 4 also, because the middle. But if you have enough, you don't want let me give you an example of an average. If there's 2 homes that have sold in the neighborhood, and last year home prices were $800 to $850, and in January someone listed for $1 million, got a bidding war, got 1.1, and the next person's like, well, I saw that, so I'm gonna go 1.2, and they do, right? Because the market's always moving. Markets are not static. So now the average is 1.15. But if you look at the median, the average is actually more 8.75, right? It's a middle. It's middle. If you look at enough, you don't want the outliers that can it's like anything in life. If you have one kid who's an amazing swimmer and they're half a length ahead, the average will make everyone else look better, and then your kid, talking to myself now, will think they're not doing as well, but really the middle is all of these kids, right? So there's 4 kids and one's all the way in the front. They're gonna pull the average up and make everyone look like they needed to go a faster time, when the other 3 kids are all back here, so the median's back here, but the average is up there. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. So we have to look at real life and look at real estate, and so now we're looking at today in real estate. But what we haven't done yet is fast forward to next year. We haven't landed in Texas on our plane yet. We're still up in the sky. And right now in real estate, everyone is getting ready to list their home. And if they haven't listed their home yet, they're getting ready to list their home. So make sure to reach out to everyone, because everyone wants to sell. Everyone wants to sell for 65 different reasons. Everyone wants to sell because they've been wanting to sell since 2019. Everyone wants to sell because they can't believe how high home prices have gone. And everyone wants to sell because they're okay, I watched the stock market going down. Maybe they missed it in 2020, but they didn't miss it the first half of this year. Inflation's going through the roof, interest rates going through the roof. Now, I actually don't want to sell, one, because I got little kids, and 2, because I have a low rate. If you have a low rate, the best financial position you can put yourselves in is to protect your 30-year fixed. Because if you think about net present value, your home price can go up and down, but if you're not moving, it doesn't affect you, right? Like, you should have that conversation with clients too. There's nothing that will build more respect with someone in your life is when you're like, look, I would benefit by telling you in the short term to sell, but in the long term, like, maybe you'll get a better deal on a house, but if rates go up, like, maybe just keep your house, or maybe do a cash out refi and pay off all your debts and stay there and renovate or whatever you want. But people are selling right now, and it's gonna get really obvious. If you look in the MLS, you'll see it right now. But it's already happening in other cities. New York City and Northern California, home prices are like 130% above the equilibrium value. The equilibrium value, let's just say value, forget about the word equilibrium, I'm not trying to geek out here, but like, value and price have nothing to do with each other. They should, but they don't. Value is what something is worth. Price is what something costs, right? So like, gallon of gas was worth $2 for the last like 10 years. A year ago it cost $1.70, now it costs like a lot, like $5. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's not worth $5, but if people need gas, it's worth $7, it's worth $10. People don't need houses anymore. They can go on vacation. They don't need houses anymore. It's not hyperbole, like some people need houses just like some people are moving to Charlotte, but not everyone's moving to Charlotte, not everyone needs houses, guys, because a lot of people are going back to school now. They're not homeschooling anymore. They don't need that extra room. A lot of people are going back to work. They're not homeworking anymore. They don't need that extra room. A lot of people are going back on vacation. They don't need the backyard as big anymore. The pool's still popular, but it's just a little bit less popular today than even 6 months ago, right? Like, now that things have opened back up. You see where I'm going with this? So you got the people in 2019 that were getting ready to sell in 2020, and they've held off. You have people in 2020 looking to sell. Now, again, one of the bright lights is in this, one of the bright spots is that rates have gone so high, which is still historically low, guys. Just want you to know that. Like, if someone wants to buy a home, I just sold a property last year at a 6.25% rate. It's just all perspective. But some people won't sell because they're like, I've got a 2.8% rate. I can't afford to buy again. But the amount of people who are going to sell in the next 6 months, holy cow. So on a macro scale across the country, it's already happening. You're seeing it in Charlotte, but it's not obvious. You go to New York City, you go to the Bay Area, Sacramento, but even further south, like San Jose, Los Gatos, Los Altos, like all like Palo Alto, all those expensive areas, Silicon Valley. Guys, they already moved half that stuff to Austin because it was too expensive, and now everyone's getting out. Austin is through the roof, like half of Texas through the roof. Population growth is slowing. I don't know if you guys noticed that. The population growth, I think, and people joke that it's going to go back up after the pandemic. So yeah, you'll get a little bit of a bump from the last like 2 years. But all kidding aside, population growth is going down, which affects housing. But also, anyone who's been in business 5+ years, the baby boomer generation is all selling, right? They're getting to that place in their life. A lot of those 2020, 2019, the last 2.5 years have happened. How many people in the last 2.5 years have retired or planned on retiring, or now they can't retire, but they still were planning on selling? There's so many people. And then millennials are renting. Now, the good news is millennials will buy when they see how high rental rates are, because rental rates go up, right? Like, over time, rental rates go up, and when the housing market goes down, rental rates go up. So rental rates always go up, which is great news for investors. We'll get to that in a minute. So there's always good news. It's not like Chicken Little, the sky's falling. And it's still a really good time. Like Teresa said, like, there's no one with negative equity. You could have put all the money in the world in your house, it still went up. You put a pool in your house, it goes up. You renovate your kitchen, it goes up, And again, guys, like when someone says like, well, I think I get 87 cents for the kitchen, and I get 69 cents per dollar for the pool, and I get 73 cents for the bathroom. No, you get whatever someone will fall in love with that house for, and that emotion is changing again. Again, I put a pool in about 3 years ago, and I love the pool, but the pool a year from now is worth less than it was a year ago. Now here's what happens. When the consumer who buys a home with a pool doesn't need that pool as much, and they start saying, I don't want that pool as much, what happens to pool companies? Pool companies start pulling back. And when someone says, I can go back on vacation, I don't need a pool, I don't even need like the backyard entertainment, I don't need any of that stuff. I'm gonna downsize my house, I don't need to or even buy a bigger house. Everything contracts. The housing market's changing. I mean, does anyone not see that in Charlotte? I mean, you guys are nodding. I mean, 6 months ago, there was no such thing as price improvement. Like the other day, someone was like, Dave, tell me about that listing that your firm has. I'm like, yeah, what about it? It's like, well, I feel like it's been on the market for a really long time. I texted the agent, I was like, how long has it been on the market? He's like, oh, we went live on Friday. I'm like, wait, of like April? No, like May? Like, no, Friday. I was like, wait, like 3 days ago? I was like, hey, my understanding is that like we went live like 3.5 days ago. Like, I know, you're still on the market, you're just not changing the MLS? Guys, good news, bad news. The good news is 3 days is not stale. If you're new to the market, if you're new to real estate, homes in Charlotte, there should be about a 3-month inventory. The average home should not be off the market in under a month. The average home should get roughly 8 showings. It should take about 2 a week, and it should take about a month to go under contract. When it goes into contract opening weekend, it was all emotion. Because no buyer was ready for that house. Now I'm digging into the weeds now in the real like psychology of real estate or where we are in 2022 in June. No one does, even if you're ready to buy a house and you're like, oh, I've got 600 grand and I'm putting 20% down and this is my interest rate, blah, blah, blah. Like you're all ready to go. In a normal market, you're like, well, hey, it's in the market today. Like, and forget about coming soon. That's going to go away too. I mean, that's obvious. You're already seeing like, remember when coming soon was 21 days? Can we make coming soon 4 months? I mean, it was just so crazy with emotion. It's like, yeah, let's do coming soon for like 9 months. We thought it was so cool, and then everyone realized coming soon. And now it's like, okay, let's make it like 2 days or maybe like a week. I think you should do like a week to have a little bit of runway. But I mean, like, airports don't have like 17 miles of runway. They'll run out of gas and the plane won't even get off the ground. So you need a little bit of runway, but you don't need so much runway. It's not a space shuttle that goes straight up and comes straight down. So you need enough time, guys, for logic. We need to get back to logic land. We're so far into emotional land right now, but it's changing. And it's changing for 2 huge reasons. I'm throwing a lot at you guys, but I hope it's all coming together and making sense. One, it's all changing because the economy, we're in a recession. Like this 99% of me believes we're in a recession. You know, 2 straight quarters negative GDP is historically what signifies a recession. There's good news about a recession, by the way. Now they're saying there's other variables like unemployment. It's gonna be hard to gauge that because no one wants to work. There's other variables like inflation. Well, inflation's never been this high since like Jimmy Carter, I think, was in office in the late 70s. And so we're gonna be in a recession. Like you will see it 4th of July weekend. Like put on your calendar to look at CNN, Fox News, wherever you want, 4th of July weekend. They'll talk about the recession that just hit, which we're in right now. Like everyone's like, oh, we're going into a recession. Like we might be in a recession. No, like you're always moving, right? Well, what does that mean? You know that the housing market actually goes up 60% of the time in a recession? Well, it went up the last time. It went up in 2020 during the recession. So what are the odds it goes up this time? If it goes up 60% of the time and it went up last time, what happens this time? Everything else we've already talked about how everything costs more, about how everyone's net worth was at an all-time high, now it's all coming down. I believe that housing supply is gonna triple within 30 days because you have this like wall of like August 1st and you have today is what, like June 6th? So 7th? 7th? Yeah, time flies, guys. Remember yesterday when it was like pre-pandemic? Remember like 1999, they're talking about like Y2K? Like, I mean, like time just flies, holy cow. You have this wall where like August 1st, everything stops. You guys know that, right? Like everyone's like, well, I'm on vacation. Well, it actually stops right after 4th of July for vacations. And then you have a little bit of a bump in late July. They're like, can I sneak back in, get my kids into school before school starts in mid to late August? But come August 1st, just psychologically, like it's too late. Then September, you get a little bit of a bump because now everyone's like back to normal, like kids are in school, and they're like, okay, I'll start looking again if I do something. And that goes until like Thanksgiving weekend. Thanksgiving weekend's actually a really big weekend because everyone's together and like I want to live by family. I don't have anything else going on. I got Black Friday off. It's gonna be a bad Black Friday, guys. First of all, Black Friday starts like now with like online, and no one's buying anything anymore, like because they can't. Like there's never been so much noise around inflation, at least in my lifetime, than there is right now. Like if anyone didn't know about inflation, we talked about it in January, but if you're like, well, what's inflation? Well, you're about to see inflation. But so August 1st, everything stops, picks back up September, it goes until Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving weekend comes and goes, guys, and then the market just stops, right? Like the market stops in the month of December. Well, if you put your house on the market in September and you're not on the contract in October, and you're like, well, I saw that video where the market's gonna come down, so I'm just gonna take my house. No, that's not how it works. Like you still have to move, you still have to go up or down, you can't afford your house. So what do you think is gonna happen this fall with inventory? Even if it doesn't go up, is it gonna go down? Or does it slowly go up? If a house doesn't sell, what happens to the house? Price goes down. There's no tricks here, guys. Like, I mean, I love to say like I'm smarter than I am, but I'm not. Like, it's really basic. If a house doesn't sell, what do you do to the house? You drop the price. And then what does a neighbor do when they see that like the house didn't sell opening weekend?
Panic.
They panic. And so people are always doing stuff, guys. When the market's hot, it's like, oh wow, you got 400, I paid 200, I can get 450, great. Oh wow, you got 450, I'm gonna get 500. Oh great, you got 500, I'm gonna get 550. And at the same time, they're like, wow, you sold with 30 offers, I only need 3. You sold with 3 offers, I only need 1. You sold in 10 minutes, I don't mind waiting a couple of days. And then all that kind of goes away, and who's left holding the bag? And then it's not the same thing as speculation, like with Miami and Vegas condos, where you go in the contract for 200, you flip it to someone before it closed for 350, they buy it, they sell it as a resale for 450, they buy it and they sell it 3 years later for 600, and that person's like, what do I do now? No one wants any $100,000 studio condo in Miami or Vegas. The good news is we don't have speculation here. We have a lot of people moving here, but not everyone's moving to Charlotte, guys. It would be really bad if everyone was moving to Charlotte. If everyone's moving to Charlotte, there's no one to buy the homes where all these people are coming from. Does that make sense? And if everyone's moving to Charlotte, the demand for work would go through the roof and salaries would go down. Does that make sense? And if everyone's moving to Charlotte, the roads would be overridden and your city and state taxes would go up. Like you don't want everyone moving here. Then if investors actually go away, because then prices go back up and they can't afford to get in. Like there is like a cycle here. But the housing market, guys, like to be honest, like sellers either need to do nothing or get in and out now. Like in and out now. I don't even mean like this year. I mean like you have like a 60-day window. I mentioned 30 days. And the 30 days is because everyone's getting ready to go on vacation. No one sells their house while they're on vacation. They do before. No one sells their house with the Christmas tree in the living room. They do before. And then no one wants to wait until next year because this Christmas is going to be most likely. I don't want to tell you guys all this stuff. You guys know this. Like, what do you think the spending season's going to look like this Christmas? I mean, like, no one's doing anything. Are you shaking your head, man? Like, yeah, no one's doing anything right now, guys. No one's doing anything right now. Do you know that vacations were projected to be like 15 times as high as they are right now? Don't get me wrong, like some of us are going on vacation, like, oh no, I went on a vacation, that's great, yeah. You went on 1, not 2, and it's your first one in 3 years, so technically you should have went on 3 back to back to back. But you're not gonna do that because we don't have all the extra money because we're putting it into everything that we're paying for and everything's so expensive. Now some people are doing things because they think they're rich. There's been, I'm not trying to be funny, like, I mean, people just feel like they're rich. Every survey will show it to you, everyone's bank account, but it's because inflation makes people feel rich. Do you know that if you have 10 grand in your bank account, that you're in the top 1% 30 years ago? You know, like, because inflation, right? And so we have this false sense of security. And then you go to acquire a car, and you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna pay like 30, 40 grand. No, I was looking at this like SUV the other day, and I was like, my car is getting old, I'm just curious. I just looked online. I thought it was like 45, 50,000. It was like 92,000. I'm like, wait, what? You know, I was like, my first townhome was like 130. I had no idea. And so you know what I did? Nothing. I did nothing. Like I just closed my screen. I'm like, well, I'm not buying that. I had no idea. We have no idea, guys. Once we realize, see, we still feel good because we all own houses that have equity, hopefully. But once people start going on the market and they don't sell right away, now we have sellers like, it's been 4 days, just drop the price. Either you're a bad agent or it's overpriced. And I'm like, well, I mean, yes, you're overpriced. You know, I'm not gonna say we're bad agents, but they're like, but it's been 2 days. And so they plummet the price. It used to be like, yeah, it's been like 2 months. You think we should make a price drop? Now it's like, it's been 2 days. And so you can have this like, you had this like space shuttle go straight up. When SpaceX went up, Blue Origin, all that stuff, it goes up, it's up there for like 4 minutes, it comes right back down, guys. Like in any aspect of life. If something goes straight up, if a relationship's like too good to be true on day one, like it comes right back down. Like if there's no like bumps in the road, if it's just like, wait, stock market went straight up, like the housing market went straight up, like inflation went straight up, interest rates went straight up. Now, on the back end, the good news is after the housing market crashes, which it will definitely do, you're starting to see in other major markets, then interest rates come back down. Do you know why interest rates go up? Because there's too much demand. Now I will say, going back in time again, I'm trying to give you guys a lot in a short period. Guys, interest rates in 2010 were 4.7%. This is an important fact. Now I'm getting really deep into real estate and where we are today. Interest rates in 2010 were 4.7%. It's not that long ago. I don't know about you, but I was in real estate then, and I thought 4.7 was like amazing. Then they started going down, and they went down, and they went down. They had a little bump, but they just kept going down, 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 to like 2.5, like just free money. And then last summer, A year ago today, or tomorrow, yesterday, a year ago this month, rates are going back up. The year started around 2.55, it ended almost at 3. And 2.55 to 2.96 is a 15% jump. It's only a 0.4 percentage point increase, but it's a 15% jump in 1 year. That changed everything. That changed everything. And in this year, they've just gone through the roof. They should have went up 5 years ago, guys. They should actually be getting ready to come back down. So I think they're gonna come back down faster because they went up too high. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the good news on the back end is that rates went up too high, too fast. It was too steep of a climb, so they'll come back down. That's good news. That's good for someone who, if they're thinking about buying in the next 6 months or a year, they're like, okay, watch the market. If you find a great house, do it now. I mean, you should never buy a home because of money. You should buy a home for your family. Like in the 50s, that was the American dream. In 2020, 2021, that was the American dream. I don't know if people ever go back in time, guys. Like I think like 2020, 2021 is going away. Just like 9/11, just like 2008, just like 9/11. Unfortunately, like people don't save in America. Like we don't save, we don't act on logic, we act on emotion in everything we do. And so interest rates went up too fast, too recent. Interest rates were supposed to go up. The mortgage rates were supposed to go up 5 years ago. And the Fed should have released a hold on rate at least 3 years ago. It was getting too expensive and the pandemic made it obvious. The supply chain issues pushed, see, inflation was 5% a year ago. It was already high. But it wasn't obvious because people were, here's the thing, when I was a kid, I looked at everyone, like the one that's still true is the teacher. I still have so much respect for a teacher. But I looked at like the politician, and I looked at like the CEO, and I was like, oh, they're all just brilliant because they got successful and they're older. And then as you get older, like some of them are great people and really smart, and some not as much. But you know, one thing I realized now that I'm an adult is that life's actually, it's really difficult in the day-to-day because it doesn't go exactly as you plan in life, and that's Genesis 1:1 reminds us that. Like it's just not perfect, this planet. But at the same time, it's really simple, guys. Life is really simple. The smartest CEO in the world, the greatest leaders on the planet, break everything down to like the lowest common denominator of, well, they can't afford to buy this. I don't care how good of a good it is. You know, they can't afford to get the loan. The house price jumps double in the last 5 years. They still need their down payment. Okay, well now they still have the down payment, but now rates have gone up. Okay, so now the payment's higher. People are always going to want to buy homes, but the sticker shock is starting to feel people. People are starting to feel it. You know, they want to buy the second home, now they're not doing that as much anymore. And you're like, well, no, I just sold a home in Myrtle Beach. Okay, yeah, it doesn't mean that no one's doing something. It just means it's starting to pull back. Well, what about the person who wants to sell their second home because they want to buy their retirement home? It's just like this trickle-down effect that is starting to happen, if that makes sense. But if you look back to the family of 4 making $75,000, like the median income in America, that means that they make about $55,000 before taxes. That's about $4,500 a month. Let's just call it $5,000 a month. Their mortgage is $1,500. That puts them at $3,500. You look at gas. You look at food. Food's like $800 a month. Gas is pushing that. That's half of that, guys. We haven't even talked about utilities. We haven't even talked about just incidentals like clothes for kids. We haven't talked about vacations. We haven't talked about like upgrading a home. We haven't talked about like replacing something in the home and repairs. We haven't talked about like anything fun. We haven't talked about like repairing your car or nothing. You see how fast like a $75,000. I mean, it's crazy. So we live in this world. We're like, oh, home price is going through the roof. Everyone's worth $1 million. Bidding wars, blah 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 blah. But if we actually slow down, the average family of 4 in America is struggling right now. And if they don't tell you, it's because they're not telling you because like we're telling them how great life is, or they don't realize it. They either are starting to realize it, they just haven't looked at their credit card statement recently, or they have realized it and they just haven't told you yet. But what they're going to do next is they're going to start just weaning down on what's not necessary. And that includes the bigger home. You know, people don't buy, I put a pool in my house. Like, if you want to put a pool in your house, put a pool in your house. If you want to upgrade your home, upgrade your home. The home should not be the financial tool. Now, it's an amazing investment. It's the greatest way to wealth, but people should not be buying a home for the investment. They should be buying a home for their family, because that way, if the market goes up or down, it doesn't like ruin their marriage when they realize like their value has gone down, right? Now, you should sell for finance, and you should buy for family. I actually didn't realize that was alliteration. It's just true though. Like, you should buy your home for your family, you should sell for finance, right? Like, it's like, okay, Megan and I were at a house a few years ago, and they're like, well, my daughter has 3 more years of school, and actually, I usually give good advice, Megan. Actually, no, it was good advice because they bought a more expensive home that they couldn't afford, and that's actually what we said. So his family was like, well, we have 3 more years of school before Jet graduates, so we're gonna wait 3 years, and we're gonna sell our home in Matthews, and then we're gonna buy our forever home in Maine. Well, the second home in Maine was gonna have a higher interest rate because it's a second home, and it was gonna be a more expensive home. Their home was worth like 600, the more expensive home was gonna be worth like 1.2. And we're like, well, if home prices go up, which they probably, will, which is what happened, your home will be worth more, but the more expensive home will be worth even more, and now you don't have enough money for your down payment. They're like, well, our daughter's gonna graduate in 3 years, so it's more comfortable and convenient to wait, but also we wanna save for down payment. Guys, you cannot catch the economy with savings. Like, there's no one that saved enough money to catch appreciation, right? On both ends. And if the market starts going back down, it's because they put the rate up to help make you want to save, which is what's happening now. The Federal Reserve has put a rate up where people stop spending money and want to save. But now you can't afford to do anything, because if you don't sell your house to use that money for buying, then all your money's stuck in your house. So we sold the house because we talked to them about it, and they're like, well, it's more convenient to wait 3 years. But the question I had was, guys, what happens if in 3 years home prices go up, which they did? Your house from 600 goes to 750, let's call it 8. But the 1.2 goes to like 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. And you don't have enough money for the down payment. Or maybe you don't have enough money for the down payment, but not for your payment. Or maybe you don't have money for your down payment, but not for your payment, and interest rates have gone up. We talk about that too, because here's the thing, guys. Interest rates, like I just said a few minutes ago, should have went up years ago. Does that make sense? Rates, the market's been going up for how long? Rates should have went up years ago. And so the bad news is there's a lot of sticker shock out there right now, because everyone's like, where's my 2.9% rate? Hopefully you still get asked that every now and then? Every day. 2.9. No, 5% is still a great rate, but the sticker shock, right? It's like the car. Prices of cars weren't going up, and now I'm like, wait, that's a $90,000 car? I thought it was like $27,000. I guess I'm not in college anymore, but still, like $90,000 for like a random SUV, it's unbelievable. Where's that money coming from, guys? The average family in America, middle-class America, is almost like teetering on the poverty line today. Because when you take the salary, but unemployment rate's at an all-time low. Yeah, it's great. Everyone has a job that they can't afford to keep. Like, that's just where the world is, guys. Like, they can't afford it. And so everyone has a job. And so, people are saying we're not going to be in a recession because everyone has a job. And one of the indicators is low unemployment. You need high unemployment for a recession. I'm speaking truth to you guys. I was doing a lot of research preparing for this, and I did research on one thing. I used to do it on 2, I only did it on 1 now. When I was an economist, I researched 2 things, now I research 1. I used to research variables and then other people's opinion. Now I research variables. Because other people's opinion is to sell other people's subscriptions, right? I don't think we're going to be in a recession because everyone has a job. Unemployment's never been lower. That is not accurate. Everyone has a job, and no one's getting raises. They're outpacing inflation. You get a 2% rate, inflation is 9%, you lost 7 percentage points. Does that make sense? Again, $75,000 family of 4. Let's call it 80, guys. Let's give them a $5,000 bump, which no one is getting right now. And 80,000 is more than most families of 4 make in America. It's more like 67,000. Let's say it's 80. They make $6,000 before taxes. They make 4,000 or 5,000. We already did this. I just want to remind you guys, there's no money there. There's no money there. So where's everyone's wealth? Where's everyone's wealth right now? In their house. So what does a family do when they start stressing out, the marriage is going south, they start pulling back things for the kids, they start budgeting they've never done before, and they look at nothing there? What do? They sell the one thing that they can. They put things on the marketplace on Facebook. They start selling their collections, like, oh, that painting doesn't do me any good right now, I should get rid of that. I collect sports cards. My wife the other day was like, you should sell a sports card. It seems like a waste of money with inflation and everything. I'm like, well, actually, if I never sell them, eventually it'll be worth more because of inflation. And then I just don't have time either. It's the time. But she's not wrong, because no one's going to buy sports cards any more than they're going to buy houses when the market. Some people will buy houses, but when the market goes down, you don't buy anything. The family of 4 making $4,000 a month after taxes, which is more like $3,500. Right now, they are now forced to do what they have to do to take care of their family of 4. Does that make sense? And so like, yes, it may not look obvious that we're in a recession because unemployment rate is at an all-time low. It may not look obvious that we're in a recession because foreclosures are at an all-time low. It may not look obvious that we're in a recession because we haven't had a second straight quarter of negative GDP yet, but it's coming. It may not look obvious that we're in a recession because stock market started the year at an all-time high, and we're still only about 6% off of last year's high. So we're starting to come down, but like, so it's not obvious. It's not obvious. If you have any friends, or if you have any clients that make under 6 figures right now, and 6 figures is like the new 5 figures, I'm not being funny. Like, it's inflation is real, guys. Interest rate, it all went up at the same time. Inflation is the foundation of stymieing the economy. So forget about everything I said. Like, the Fed would not have raised the rate if the economy wasn't soaring. You know, inflation wouldn't be through the roof if the economy wasn't soaring. So yes, like, if you look back in time, like, I had more hair and blonde highlights and I was 20 pounds light. Like, yeah, I'm saying, like, I'm not saying look in the rearview mirror, but I'm saying, yes, in the rearview mirror, the economy was soaring. People just did whatever they wanted. Like, they bought $90,000 SUVs and they bought $600,000 homes for 1.2, and they did $200,000 due diligence checks. We just saw a $10,000 due diligence check. 3 years ago, that was crazy high. 2 months ago, that was insulting. Like, cursing someone out. That was a 4-letter word 2 months ago. They say, well, you're not going to offer 100 on a $500,000 house? Like, we're going to give you 10, you're going to like it. 3 years ago, no one's paying 10. 2 months ago, no one's paying less than 100. You see what just happened? Why are we ignoring this? The family of 4, guys, is going to cash out their house with all their equity. That's just my opinion. It's just, I'm just using common sense. You know, the family of 4 is going to sell their stock that is post-tax dollars. Now, retirement money, you know, leave in there, but if it's a post-tax dollar investment, they're going to sell that. They're going to use that to keep their credit card bills down. They're going to use that for their budget. They're going to use that for their daily necessities. And they're going to start pulling back. They're going to go to a grocery store, and like, you know that rule you see on the outside? They're going to start staying on the outside. They're going to tell the kids you can pick one bag. They're going to tell the kids you can do Gatorade or soda, not both. You can tell the kids you can get 1 candy or maybe none. You're going to get 3 apples, not 6. It's just it's just real, because they can keep doing a credit card that keeps going up and up. But what does all that do, guys? That just brings down the profit for companies. What does lower profit margin for companies mean for stock values? I believe that there's another drop to happen in the stock market, and most people believe this. Most economists would say, we went down, like I said, 10 to 30 points, 10, 20, 30, Dow, S&P, NASDAQ. I believe there's another one. I think right now it's teetering. It's always a little lower than higher, so it's doing this. It went like this, and now it's kind of going like this. So if you look at one day, like, if you want to like tell me everything I'm saying is wrong, then yeah, like, if you pick the second of the day, like, you can always win any argument you want. But in a totality, you know, over the rest of this year, I bet it goes down another 10, 15 points. That's not good for the companies, but it's like the tail wagging the dog, right? Like, does the stock market going down hurt the companies? No, the companies go down, which hurts the stock market. The stock market goes down, which hurts the consumers. Consumers have less value, which hurts the companies. Companies go down, which hurts the stock market. You see what I'm doing here? See what's happening here? We're getting ready to land the plane. So what happens? Teresa said it a minute ago. Where's all your value? Your home. What's the one thing you have control over? The equity in your home. You sell your house now, you can buy a lesser expensive home that has the same number of bedrooms. A $700,000 home with 4 bedrooms, you can find a $400,000 home with 4 bedrooms. You can rent for a year and then buy back into the market. You know, you can sell and then downsize now versus 2 years from now when your son or daughter or your client's son or daughter graduates. If you just ask questions to your family and to your friends and your clients, most people would realize and would self-discover after about 10, 15 minutes that, like, now is the time. Again, the great thing about the house is if, like, someone is renting right now and then they found their forever home, then buy that house. If someone, like, really needs more space, then buy that house. But hopefully they're also selling, right? Hopefully they're also selling. And actually, I would actually put less money down on the new house, because here's the thing. One, you're gonna be able to refinance your home in about a year or 2. And so you might as well just prepare for that and use that cash. 2, the stock market's gonna keep going down, so put that money in cash. You know, really what people should be doing right now is selling their house, buying stock, dollar cost averaging stock as it goes down, buying the house as it's the right house for the family, and keeping as much cash in case inflation teeters. Now, inflation has to come back down, but it'll never go as low, guys. It'll never go as low as it was. And cost of living will never catch up for at least 3 years. And so if we look at, like, the rest of this year, I'm talking to you guys as experts and as friends and as peers, but it also is like moms, dads, family people. But as realtors, as real estate experts, hopefully, guys, I think you have to reach out to everyone in your life, buying, selling, renting, and just ask them what they believe is happening in the overall market. And just remind them that home prices are the last one up and down, and they are pulled and pushed by everything else. And they have gone up 32% because of the pandemic, and they have gone up 120% because of low interest rates. And now the pandemic's gone and interest rates are higher, and they've gone up almost 150% since inflation was like negative in 2009. Guys, in 2009, inflation was negative. That means they were giving you, like it actually was costing money to borrow. Like if you were getting, remember the 0% on cars? I actually asked someone a couple months ago when I was looking for a car, I was like, so you guys have any 0% rates? They laughed at me. They're like, you're looking between 5 and 8. I'm like, no, like car loan, like not like years. It's like, oh yeah, you can do 8 years, and we're looking at 6, 7, 8 years now because the payments are getting so high. So, but I was like, no, I'm good. Like I don't need a new car that bad. You know, like I just need. I was looking for a car. I know you're gonna say SUV. Like 2 kids, want to get lower gas costs. I ended up not doing anything because it's just too expensive. And so inflation was negative. It was deflation in 2009. Pulling it all together. I don't know what time it is. Oh, we're doing pretty good. We're almost done. In 2009, inflation was deflation. That's why prices got so. That's what prices were so low. Okay. I'm gonna land the plane now. I want you to see this. See, like history repeats itself. It's backwards, but it's the same exact thing. In 2009, we had deflation because the market was so bad. Home prices were so low. Stock market was so low. Unemployment was so high, right? Then in 2008, the world was coming to an end. Like it was bad. I'm not being funny. Like, and so we had deflation because it was so bad and it was obvious. Well, of course we have deflation. It's so bad. Now we have historically high 40+ year inflation because the market's so good. Well, what happened after 2009, guys? Things started rebounding. Deflation became stagnation. Stagnation became inflation, and it went up to like 4, then came back down, but like it's been going up. What do you think is going to happen this time? In 2008, the economy just crashed, right? We had a recession, housing prices hit all-time lows in 2009, and we were in deflation. Right now, we have the highest inflation in 40 years. So let's forget about this one right now. In 2009, everything was down here. In 2022, everything's up here. What did 2009 do in 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16? So what do you think happens here? Stock market was low, it went up. Inflation was low, it went up. Prices were low, they came up. You see what I'm going with this? Consumer confidence was low, it went up. No one was traveling, they all started traveling. No one was buying, they started buying. It starts going up, we're all the way up here. We've hit the ceiling. The ceiling, like, it doesn't just go up forever. Again, no matter how much money someone has, Elon Musk is the richest man on the planet. He's cutting 10% of his staff. Like that's like real. It doesn't matter how much. The people that have billions didn't get there by just haphazardly just spending without a budget. And the family of 4, 67,000, they can't afford to put too much on a credit card when they have ceilings on the credit card and the rate keeps going up. So in 2009, everything hit a bottom. In 2022, I believe everything's hit a ceiling. Does that make sense? That's like the Emmys, you know, like when you've been talking too long and then the music starts playing and everything, like the phone just keeps ringing, like, all right, keep ringing and David will shut up. So as I land the plane, guys, I want you to see that. Regardless if you were in real estate in 2009, or if you had a family in 2009, you're a single professional, doesn't matter where you were in life. In 2009, everything was at a floor. Is that fair? In 2022, the question is everything at a ceiling? And inflation's at historic highs. The year started with interest rates at historic highs. Housing prices are at historic highs. The year started with stock market at historic highs. See where I'm going with this? You see how, like, I just threw so much mumbo jumbo at you guys, and you're like, hopefully there's a lot of value there, but you see how we finish? It's so obvious when you pay attention that we are the opposite of 2009. We just watched everything happen for the last 13 years, and now the question is, do we go against everything that makes sense and just go up for another 13 years? No, you never go as low as you were. Stocks will never get as low, real estate will never get as low, like it'll never get as low. But when everything just went up for 13 years after it hit a bottom, what happens when you now hit a ceiling? So I'll tell you, I'll leave you with this, guys. I got 2 boys, and they love to like, oh, you just painted your ceiling, let me throw a ball at it. You throw the ball at the ceiling, it comes right back down, guys. Doesn't matter if it hits the ceiling or not. If it hits the ceiling, it comes right back down. If it doesn't hit the ceiling, it comes down a little bit slower, but it always comes back down. It's gravity. The economy is just like gravity. When it was at a floor, now it's reverse. Okay, so when the economy's high, it's just like gravity. When the economy's low, it's like a trampoline, like my boys who are crazy. So 2009, last thing I'll say, 2009, guys. Every variable we just spent the last hour and a half talking about was at an all-time low. 2022, every variable that we're talking about, from inflation to the S&P and Dow and NASDAQ, from home prices to consumer price index, from interest rate on mortgage, interest rates on everything else that a consumer can purchase, regardless of direct consumer or not. Everything 2009 was an all-time low. Everything right now is at an all-time high. And so even if you think it's going to go up a little more, it doesn't make sense. You know, you pull back a rubber band, there's only one option. You can pull it back a little bit further, you can pull it back a little bit further, you pull it back a little further, you pull it back any further, it just breaks. It's never going to go backwards, right? Well, it's never going to go backwards. Eventually it's going to fly. And so in 2009, it was obvious that everything had to go up. In 2022, I think it's very obvious that everything has to come down. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are. We can talk offline, but I'm going to stop now. I hope that was really helpful. Is that good? Does that make sense? Anyone having questions? A couple questions while we're together? Usually you guys have good questions. No questions.
If you say that 2009 was, you know, the bottom was here and the ceiling is here and this is where we are today, where do you think we'll be a year from now if you're using that scale?
Halfway back.
About halfway?
Yeah. Just imagine, I'm not looking at you, Lindsay, but like I'm looking at myself right now, okay? If I was 165 in college and I'm 185 now, my goal is 175. I'm not trying to be funny, but you're never like, you know, you go halfway back. Like, it's just true, right? North Carolina's a half-back state, and South Carolina. Like, people go to Florida, they come halfway back. I'm not being funny, like, it's true. You know, interest rates will not get back down to 2.5 anytime soon, but they'll go to 3.75, right? Home prices, $1 million home that was 500 will go to 750. You know, inflation is 8.5. It won't get down to 2, but it'll go back down to 4.5. Everything will go halfway back. The stock market is at 33 in the Dow right now, as of this morning. At the bottom, I think it was 18. I think it'll go halfway back to 25. You know, like everything will be halfway back. That's a great question. That's a good question. Yes.
If you have been working with sellers for the past year and they didn't take advantage because whatever reasons they have, they were not quite ready, how would you now express this change? Because they're kind of blind still. How would you adjust their mindset without sounding as a Debbie Downer?
Okay, I'll make it fast and easy. Are you gonna be in the house in the next 5 years? They say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna be in the house in the next 5 years?
They're not. They're ready to sell now.
Well, then
maybe
why
in
aren't
the
they
next
selling?
couple of months, but they have this mentality from last year when everything was selling fast.
Yeah.
And I've been slowly preparing them for it's not
Right.
gonna sell that fast anymore.
So I would just ask them if they know what the interest rate is today on a mortgage versus a year ago. Ask them if they know what the interest rate is on any consumer debt today versus a year ago. Ask them if they know what stock market is doing today versus a year ago. Ask if they know about inventory in their community today, in neighboring communities, move up and downsize markets today versus a year ago. And ask them if they see the difference in the pandemic in the world today versus a year ago. It becomes so clear when you see how much has changed since a year ago. Because that's what I mean, like, then it gets obvious, right? Like, when 2008 ended, it just happened. It was so much pent up need. It was the demand. We had pent up demand over the last 2 years, guys, to sell. The demand to buy is partially real and partially artificial. You know, it's artificial from the fact that people wanted this big home, a big lot, because of the pandemic. Some of it's real. Like, Charlotte's a very popular city. Like, it's not Chicken Little. But if it falls off 20%, if you're like 20%, that's easy, guys. Like, a $500,000 home goes to 400. But 3 years ago it was 275. If you think about the average home at 600 right now, 2 years ago they're talking 450. I mean, you guys know this. You guys are all nodding your head. So and then a few years ago it was 300. Like, prices have gone up so much that 20% is actually little. And so yeah, if someone's looking to sell in a few months, like, well, I'm just gonna keep waiting, I'm like, yeah, you and everyone else. And it's just a race to the ceiling or the floor. And I think we're at a ceiling. So the question is it gonna keep going up forever? Because every variable has changed since a year ago, except for housing prices. And actually, on a micro scale, guys, you can look at macroeconomics or micro. On a micro scale, not just Charlotte, if you pick a community, I can even challenge you that home prices today are lower than 30 days ago. If you look at enough communities, you guys are nodding, like you're starting to see price reductions, you're starting to see a few more days in the market, you're seeing people taking a home a little bit under market or under value for today, or under price. It's still overvalue. The $500,000 home a month ago, guys, was selling for $525 to $550. The $500,000 home today is going for $485 to $500. True? So the good news is I'm doing the same thing as you guys. So I'm seeing this all. Like we're all looking at this every day. The $700,000 home 2 months ago was going for $770 because it's going for 10% up. And then we're like, okay, well the difference has to be in due diligence. You got to do $70,000. Now it's like, I'll pay you $680 and I'll do $20,000 due diligence. And you're like, okay, sounds great. When do you want to close? So I would ask your sellers, what are they waiting for? Well, I think it can go up forever. Okay. I mean, I at some point, like what variable? Stock market? No. Inflation? No. Mortgage rate? No. The Fed's rate, they're expecting the 10-year to be, is inverted because they're expecting a recession. What variable? This is what I do with sellers. Everyone wants it to be their idea. The last thing I'll say about this, but it's a great question. Everyone wants it to be their idea. And so if you tell someone they need to sell, they think you're just trying to push them. They don't listen. It becomes white noise. But if you ask them, like, why are you waiting? Like, do you not need to sell? Well, I never need to sell. No one needs to sell. They do, but they don't want to tell you that. I'm not motivated to sell. Yes, you are. I don't need to sell. I got all the time in the world. No, you don't. I can wait. Well, why can you wait? Well, the market keeps going up. If I would have sold a year ago, I would have lost a lot of money. Okay, so just keep doing that. See what happens next. And I'm not being funny. Like, if these are your friends, you can be honest with them and ask them, like, seriously, which one of the 14 economic variables that impact the housing market that have all gone negative this year, have all gone red, which one of those gets you excited about the market being stronger in the fall and winter? Which one of those? Because this fall and winter, you're going to feel the cold when you go outside, unlike the pandemic. This fall and winter, you're still going to travel to see your family, unlike the last few years in the fall and winter. This fall and winter, you're going to do a lot of things that you never did in the last 2 years, but you always did in the past. And the one thing you're not going to do now is buy houses, but 2 years ago you did, and last year you did. Because last fall and winter was just like last spring and summer. You didn't do anything but buy homes online, right? This fall and winter, you're traveling to see family. You're going to Christmas parties. You're playing in the snow with your kids. You're going to see family for Thanksgiving. Like, this is real. Like, again, I don't want to overcomplicate something, but like every variable is already telling us. The stock market has so much more to go down. That's not a popular statement, but it's so accurate because the companies haven't shown their negative earnings yet. The stock market's already down 10 to 30 points, and the companies are still showing positive earnings. How can companies show positive earnings? They may still be profitable. It doesn't mean positive earnings, meaning like year over year, where like they're going backwards. If they want a 15% profit and they get 8, they're still making money, but they're making less money. And so investors get scared, and inflation's never a good thing. So yeah, I would just ask them, like, what are they waiting for? Are they waiting for stock prices to go lower? They're waiting for, interest rates to go higher? Like,
No.
you see what I'm saying though? Like,
Yeah.
I would ask those questions. Self-discovery is very powerful. It's a good question. Yes?
So you said that houses are slightly cheaper or are being listed for less. Now, what about houses that sold two houses down and a month ago or 2 months ago and appraisals were waived? Like, how do you?
Yeah, so then that's a great question, Daryl. So one thing we just did on a deal is we knew it wouldn't appraise, and now people are not willing to do the appraisal waivers often, right? Because they feel like we've hit too high of a price. So you guys are nodding. See, like I'm telling you guys, like we're all feeling it. And so 2 months ago, people were still doing the appraisal addendums. They're like, well, I'll just waive it, even if the appraisal waiver is when the lender waives it from that community. The appraisal addendum is when they say we do not need an appraisal to buy the home. Well, my big compliance officers tell me, well, your compliance officer, you're both staring at me, make sure I'm saying it wrong. Have I said everything right so far today? Like, I haven't had like the operation game where like being like with like that weird noise happening.
You're doing really good.
Okay, cool. No, but seriously, Daryl. 2 months ago, people were still living in emotion land with all the confidence in the world. 2 months ago, they're still like, oh, I'll make up the difference. Now they're like, I can't imagine home prices going that high. Yes.
I want to make a comment about that. So your appraisal you're doing today is based on information from 30 to 60 to 90 days ago. The appraisal market's going to crash big time with this. It's just going to be a delay because even though they waive the appraisal or the lender waived the appraisal, the information of the sale is still there in MLS. So when you go to appraise the house 2 doors down today, it actually looks really good. In another 60, 90 days, it's gonna have less and less impact going down, so like, you better hurry.
Yeah, and then the buyer, to
Like,
that point,
appraisals are coming in really good right now, like, we've had a couple that
yeah,
we were super worried about, they've actually come in higher.
but the buyers are more concerned than the appraisers, because the appraisers are looking backwards, the buyers are looking in present time, I'm looking forward. See the difference there, guys? See what happens there? It's a good question, but yeah, it's just like the last market. It's the opposite, and it's exactly the same. Think about it, who's in a relationship and their significant other is not their best friend and they're opposite? There's a reason for that, guys. But to that point, Daryl, what happened last time, the big similarity between 2009 and today, is that everyone's kept going higher and higher. And last time it wasn't just price, it was, I don't mind waiting an extra day to get more money. Now it's, I don't mind having less offers if I can still get the same money. I don't mind having longer days in the market to get the same money. And what we're gonna start seeing, because I'm seeing it in real time at micro level in communities, is you're starting to see more and more people listing, right? You're seeing supply pick up, and it's doing two things. One, in real time, it's suppressing values, because when you're the only show in town, you can be more expensive. But you know, Panther tickets are going down for two reasons. One, there's more seats, and two, we have soccer now. So Tepper is a very smart man, and he hedges his bets. You don't like football, you got soccer. You don't like soccer, you like football. It's not like he didn't bring soccer here when he wasn't the owner. He brought soccer here when he was after he became the owner of the Panthers. So that if you don't want soccer, you got Panthers. And if you don't like Panthers, I'm also going to give you soccer. You see what happened there? Why didn't he buy the soccer team when he was the Steelers owner? See, so like when people have options, options only work if you own all the options. Like if you own every house on your street, if there's nowhere else to buy a sandwich. But when there's 3 sandwich shops on the same street, and there's 3 houses on the same street, people do nothing. People actually stop. People think they want options, so you give them 3. And to your point, Daryl, the last person selling, like leaves, shuts the lights off, right? Because then what happens is they don't sell. It's like, wait, we're selling the market and open weekend's over. That's what's happening right now, guys, is the homes are not selling opening weekend. The sellers are freaking out. They're not lasting a month, but the sellers are dropping the price. And they're like, I can't wait. And then the neighbors are like, wait, we've been thinking about selling, and now you've dropped the price, or you haven't sold either one. I need to do it now. See, so what may happen with your client, if they don't do something right now or listen to you or both, is they'll wait for a neighbor to go, and they'll get all overconfident thinking they're gonna go over the top, and the neighbor won't sell right away, and they start questioning it, and they'll either take time or price improvement or both, and then they're gonna call you, like, get me out. You're like, well, you're not gonna get the same price you would have 2 months ago. That make sense?
Yeah.
Is this helpful? Anyone else? We're good? Was this helpful, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, hope everyone has a good afternoon.
Thank you.
I did. I was just gonna be.
How are you doing?
Is this helpful?